Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. You can't help those who don't want to be helped. Today in the rLounge, don't be the hero. Husband's nephew called me a slut. We cut them off the college tuition we'd been funding. I, 39 female, have been married to my husband Nick, 42 male, for 15 plus years. It has been a very peaceful ride for me. The only trouble we had was because of our infertility. Due to a medical condition, we couldn't conceive. It was shattering because we badly wanted to have one. The adoption law is very tedious in our state. We also have a demanding job, so my husband and I decided not to go for the adoption. It doesn't make sense to adopt a baby and then don't give them time. So instead, we decided to help the needy children and also take up the responsibility of funding the education of our sister-in-law's kids. However, a recent incident has made me question this decision and reconsider funding them because of their entitled behavior. A little backstory. Sister-in-law got divorced when her kids were small, and since then, she has been struggling to make ends meet. Her husband was abusive and alcoholic. The child support that she received was also the bare minimum because of his low income. She works 2 jobs, yet her limited income makes it difficult for her to cover the expenses of their education, which is why my husband and I decided to pitch in. Sister-in-law's 3 kids, Ava, 23 female, Ross, 20 male, and Rustin, 17 male, were once great kids. However, the boys had seemingly lost their way. But Ava, her daughter, is a total rock star. She graduated from college with distinction, has started her career at one of the most reputed MNCs, and is crushing it. Sister-in-law, and honestly all of us, couldn't have been prouder. She had always been the smart and sweet one, and it's amazing to see her thrive. Sadly, the same is not true for the boys. Ross and Rustin were also bright as kids, but as they entered their teenage years, they sort of lost their interest in studies, and now the situation has gotten so worse that I had to write a post about their evilness. So, it all started getting downhill when Ross graduated high school. We asked him about his course details so that we could plan the funding for his college tuition. He gave us a shocker that he didn't want to go to college and instead wanted us to give him the money in cash. My husband asked him what's his plan, and he said he wanted to start a business. Fair enough, but what business? Ross has no clear answer for that. He said he had something in mind, but nothing concrete. We said we don't want a blueprint right away, but at least we need to know what's the business idea he wanted to pursue. He gave a superficial brief that he wanted to start an online business. My husband and I were skeptical about investing in his venture because he wasn't clear in this idea, and also he had no business skills. We didn't decline his request right away, but asked him to give us some time to think it over. He said cool, but a few weeks later he started following up with us regarding the money as if we owed him. After a lot of to and fro, my husband and I told him clearly that we don't trust his business acumen and we won't be investing in it. He flipped out and threw tantrums. Not at us, but to sister-in-law and mother-in-law. His point was the college tuition we kept for him was anyways his money, so he should be allowed to do whatever he wanted with that. I didn't find logic in that entitlement. Yes, we took the responsibility of funding their education, and we do have the means to invest in them financially. But this doesn't mean they feel entitled to the handout. Mother-in-law tried to convince us to fund his business, but my husband said no, we don't trust his half-baked idea. Mother-in-law said that we're faltering in our commitment of supporting sister-in-law's children. My husband gave a clear statement that we would cheer for the success of his business, but not financially. At least not now, but at a later stage when we feel confident about it, we might pitch in. Also, we're ready to pay for his college tuition whenever he wants to go back to learning. There was no discussion after that, but I heard that mother-in-law was selling off her family heirlooms to fund Ross's business idea. God knows what happened after that, but Ross's business didn't see the daylight. Since then, we have been distant from them. Then spring came and he knocked on our door to apologize for his rudeness. He intended to go to college and wanted us to bear his tuition. We gave him a chance and he took admission, but since then his attitude has changed towards us. He gave us cold shoulders. Nothing very upfront but evident. Earlier, he used to be very friendly and chatty. Now it was just an exchange of pleasantries and that's it. 2 to 3 months back, it was Rustin's 17th birthday, the younger one. Sister-in-law invited us for dinner. It was going as usual. Ross also came over. As usual, he was silent with us. Anything we asked, he replied with a nod or single-word answer. But things took a turn when Rustin made a hurtful comment about me. He said, how could Nick, my husband, find me attractive when I'm mid and ugly? I stared at him with shock and disbelief. He then added that it's hard to believe how could anyone find me attractive. I just couldn't process it. Nick flipped out and questioned him about his comment. The worst part was, before Nick freaked out, everyone else, mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and Rose, laughed at his comment as if it was some kind of joke. Only when Nick got angry did everyone stop laughing and mother-in-law downplayed it, saying he was just a kid and was being funny. Nick asked him to take his words back and apologize right away, but Rustin defended himself, saying it was just a passing thought and he shared it with everyone to lighten up the mood. Nick got furious that commenting on someone's appearance is not a sense of humor. Rustin tried to further justify himself, but Nick stopped him in between and yelled, "Apologize now or face the consequence." The atmosphere turned silent. I was choking with embarrassment, anger, and hurt. Nick looked at sister-in-law for intervention, but instead of calling out Rustin for his disrespect, she said, "Calm down, Nick. People can have an opinion." Nick stood up from the table and said, "We're not having any conversation until all of you apologize to her, me." He patted me on my back and said, "Let's go." I stood up and mother-in-law held my hand and said, "It's his birthday. Let's not spoil the moment over a trivial matter. He's a child, but you're an adult, right? You should know how to handle this kind of criticism from kids." I shrugged off her hand and said, "He's not a kid, and even if he was, it's sister-in-law's responsibility to teach manners to her children, but she has clearly faltered." While we were having this conversation, I could see from the corner of my eye that Rustin and Ross exchanged looks and grinned. They clearly were enjoying the humiliation they caused me. I looked at them and said, "It's not funny. You guys are mean, and you will pay the price for your behavior." I left before anyone could react. A week after that incident, I came home to find sister-in-law and mother-in-law arguing with my husband. I entered the house, pretending they didn't exist, and went inside my room. Sister-in-law requested me to hear her out. Both of them apologized and said they scolded Rustin after we left, and he's guilty about his behavior. I said, "Okay, where is he? Why didn't I get any apology from him?" Sister-in-law said she was sorry on his behalf. The truth was, Rustin was too egotistical to apologize, but poor. They needed her money, hence sister-in-law took one for the team. Her apology was so superficial that it meant nothing to me. Their point was that Rustin is just a raging teenager and doesn't know his boundaries, hence he got swayed away in his humor. Sister-in-law and my mother-in-law were so rigid and would do anything to defend her boys, even though in the end she said she would discipline her kids, but her tone said otherwise. I said they better keep his emotions in check, and it should be the last time they spoke to me in this manner. Since then, I've been keeping low-key. Despite the incident, we processed the next semester's fee for Ross. Fast forward to a week ago. We attended Nick's grandfather's 75th birthday. Mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and the two boys were also present. Ava couldn't make it because of her work. I was wearing a deep-necked dress. I like wearing off-shoulder and deep V-necks. The moment I exchanged glances with the boys, their looks made me uncomfortable. They were ogling on my cleavage. I felt so disgusting. I mean, they're half my age and they were staring at me like this, but I ignored it and continued to enjoy it with others. During the celebration, I raised a toast to Nick's grandfather. When I finished it, everyone cheered, except for those two boys who were smirking at each other. They were making me so uncomfortable that I wanted to leave the party immediately. After a while, I was passing by them. I sensed they said something and grinned while staring at me. It was no less than harassment. They were acting as Eve teasers. I had enough, so I decided to confront them right away. I stopped and asked them what's the matter. They were taken aback. I asked what's so funny about me that whenever they saw me, it made them laugh. They froze and fumbled for an answer. I said I wasn't a teenager who would get harassed by their behavior. Rustin got nervous and remained quiet. Ross spoke up and said they were just chilling out and their grin had nothing to do with me. I said they better watch their behavior instead of defending themselves. I turned back to leave without listening to him further. I was only 2 feet away when I heard Ross saying, "What a slut," and they both burst out in laughter. I immediately turned back and they stopped laughing and got awkward. I asked them, "What did you just say?" Rustin impulsively started apologizing. Sorry, it was not about you. We saw something on the phone." I saw Ross grabbing his wrist and Rustin stopped talking. Ross said, "We didn't say anything. What did you hear? Maybe the music is too loud and it gave you the perception that we said something." I lost my temper and yelled, "If you have guts, repeat what you just said." I was an inch closer to slapping him when Nick rushed into the situation. I told him what had happened and he lost his mind. By then, others also gathered, including mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Ross argued that he didn't say anything at all, and I was just making it up. I questioned him if they didn't say anything, then why did Rustin reply that it was not about you? Rustin changed his statement in front of everyone and said he impulsively said sorry because he thought I got offended by them for some reason. It made no sense. We had to defuse the matter for the sake of grandfather because he was getting anxious. We didn't want to spoil his big day. I stayed there until dinner. Nick was constantly by my side, but the rest of the evening was awkward. Sister-in-law and mother-in-law gave me weird looks. The next morning, I got a call from Ava. She got to know about the incident from someone and was sorry for me. She said I should have slapped him right away. She even suggested I cut them off completely, which is exactly my plan. I told Nick enough is enough. We need to stop fueling their entitlement. We can't have their back while they continue to be jerks. Nick is on the same page and said we should stop funding their education since they don't respect the value we're adding to their life. While I completely agree with what Nick has decided, a small part of me is worried about dooming their life by cutting off this support. What do you guys think you'd have done in my situation? As for cutting off their funding, sometimes the best way to teach a lesson is to let them live with the consequences of their own actions. You've been more than generous, and if they can't show basic respect, it's a clear sign that their sense of entitlement has reached new heights. You're absolutely right to question the value of continuing support when it's met with such behavior, OP. You're not dooming their lives. You're showing them that respect and gratitude are not optional. Update 1. Thank you, people, for validating our actions. So Nick and I decided to withdraw the financial support we've been lending. We were not on talking terms with them after that incident. Nick said, let them reach to us, then we'll break the news. We don't need them, they do. So we remained no contact with them. They too didn't reach out to us until they needed money. Rustin graduated from high school and wanted to get into a private design college that charges tuition in bombs. Look at their ego and audacity. Sister-in-law or Rustin didn't show up or called us. Rustin just emailed Nick the details of his college with the payment link. Like, wow. Nick royally ignored his email. Instead of calling or visiting us, he just topped up the email with a reminder for payment. What an entitled brat. Then, 2 weeks later, mother-in-law called Nick and said, Honey, Rustin has been waiting on you for the payment for his college tuition. It seems you've missed reading his email. Nick replied, Rustin? Who? I don't know him. She was silent for a minute, maybe confused with Nick's response. Then she said, Got it. You're still brooding over the trivial matter. Didn't the boys clear the misunderstanding? Your wife must have misheard the stuff. Nick was like, enough of BSing. We've taken a stand to cut them off completely. We don't know who they are and what they would do in life. We don't care. Mother-in-law tried to convince him, saying these conflicts shouldn't jeopardize their lives and that we should be forgiving and bigger people. Nick said, no thank you, and hung up. Within minutes, sister-in-law blew up his phone. He ignored her calls and she started texting him sorry messages. She said she would make the boys apologize in front of us, but we shouldn't deprive them of the education. Nick responded that it was too late. She should have woken up from her slumber long before. The next day, sister-in-law was at our door along with mother-in-law. Nick didn't entertain them, saying we don't welcome disrespectful people into our homes or our lives, so they better stay away from us. Sister-in-law started crying and said she and the boys were sorry about what happened and wanted another chance. Nick said if the boys are really sorry, why didn't they join you guys to apologize? Mother-in-law jumped in saying, You know the boys are young and hormonal. They don't realize for consequences of their actions, but we adults do. We should be mindful of our actions. We cannot let them pay such a heavy price of their childish jokes. Their career, their life is at stake. Her defensive tone boiled my blood, and I gave her the hearing of my life. I was like, calling your aunt a slut is not a childish joke. It is pure misogynistic. And then gaslighting it and proving me wrong in front of everyone was sheer evil. Commenting on my looks was tasteless and disrespectful. These would call for a consequence. You guys also play a role in it by enabling their behavior. I feel sorry that they would have to suffer because their mother did a terrible job in raising them. They're going to suffer for their whole life if they don't change their attitude, and no one but you, sister-in-law, would be responsible for that. They both turned bitter and looked at Nick for intervention, but he stood firm and asked them to leave. I slammed the door in their face. I don't know if this was right or wrong, but this is what I did. The same evening, Ava called me and lauded me for my stand. She said we should have taken this decision at the very first instance when Rustin commented about my looks. Her mother, sister-in-law, has called her a witch about me, but instead got schooled by Ava. Sister-in-law wanted Ava to fund for Rustin's college and for the remaining tuition of Ross, but Ava flipped out on her mother that she should stop babying her sons, and instead of defending them, she should hold them accountable for their mistakes and let them fend for themselves. Sister-in-law asked her to stop acting like my puppet and stand by her brothers. Ava said she has taken her stand and she doesn't want to be associated with people who slut-shame women. It made me wonder about sister-in-law's character. On one hand, she's begging us to forgive her sons and at the same time bad-mouthing me in front of others. She doesn't even care for her daughter. Ava has just begun her career. How could she take care of the education of her brothers? Why can't they take out a loan if they're so keen to study, which I highly doubt? Sometimes the only way to get people to understand the gravity of their actions is to hit them where it hurts, straighten their sense of entitlement. You and Nick are doing what you think is right. It might not feel great right now, but sometimes making a tough call is the only way to push for a real change. Update 2. Here's some new information. Let me begin by addressing a common question asked by my readers. A lot of you commented on why we even pitched in to fund these narcissistic children. Well, They were not evil as kids. All three of them were very diligent and well-mannered. Sister-in-law, though not very warm and friendly, was still civil to me. We took up the responsibility to shape their life for a better future. The eldest one, Ava, made the most of it, and now she's working at an MNC in Europe. But the boys lost their path, and sister-in-law didn't even try to bring them back to the track. So, after we cut them off financially, I got to hear a lot of crappy things they've been talking about me. They said I wore revealing dresses to compensate for my ugly face, that I'm infertile and useless, that I've manipulated Nick to cut his own family, and so on. I took it with a pinch of salt. Sister-in-law had been ripped off her piggy bank, so naturally she would talk trash about us. I was glad of my decision. 3 to 4 months passed by, and one day Nick got a call from mother-in-law. She was in panic mode. Ross and Rustin were detained by the cops because of their association with illegal drug activities. While Ross was arrested, Rustin was taken into safe custody for further investigation. Mother-in-law pleaded with Nick to bail them out and save their life. Nick hesitated for a while, but then it was a matter of their lives. Sister-in-law claimed that her sons were innocent and were made a scapegoat by their friends. Nick was not convinced that they were fully innocent, yet he gave the benefit of the doubt and headed to the police station to get the details. I didn't stop him from standing with his family, but I didn't accompany him. Sister-in-law and mother-in-law were also present at the station. The cops said it was a non-bailable offense, and they had to appear in the court. Nick involved his lawyer to get the details. The truth came out, and it exposed sister-in-law's golden sons. Ross was actually involved in the drug activities. He was running a racket of supplying these banned drugs to college students. In fact, he intended to expand his racket to high school students through Rustin. The younger one luckily escaped extensive grilling because he was a few months away from being 18. Sister-in-law requested Nick to hire a lawyer for Ross and get him out ASAP, but after knowing the truth, Nick refused to burn his money on him. He said let the attorney decide what's best for him. Thanks to sister-in-law's stars, Ross got away with a lighter punishment because he was a newbie and got swayed away by the veteran of the racket who lured him into the crime world. Ross was fascinated by the easy money it brought. The fee for bailing him out before the serving period was really high, and Nick refused to pitch in. After that, sister-in-law openly turned bitter against us. She evenly alleged that I falsely framed Ross into this to take my revenge. And guess what? Some of the dumb people believed her story. I could only laugh at them who think you can fool the cops and play with the law and order of the state. Sister-in-law didn't stop here. She even disowned Ava for standing up for me and not pitching in to pay bombs of money for Ross's bail. Currently, Rustin is released from correction home while Ross is serving his prison time. I'm not sure how their career in life would mold after this incident, but I wouldn't care less about it. Lately, mother-in-law visited Nick at his office and told him that she was disowning him because he abandoned his sister and his nephew when they were in their lowest. It broke his heart that his mother never appreciated anything we did for her and sister-in-law's children, never stood up for us, but she was quick to disown him when he refused to help her criminal grandson. We've learned this lesson the hard way, that you can give your life for someone, but if the person doesn't want to see your goodness, they won't see it. We intend to remain no contact with them for the foreseeable future. Despite the trouble with them, we will share and cherish a good bond with Ava, who has been nothing but loving and grateful to us. The situation with Ross and Rustin is a stark reminder of how sometimes, despite our best efforts, things can take a turn we never expected. Staying no contact is the right decision given the circumstances. It's a hard lesson to learn, but sometimes cutting ties is the only way to preserve your own well-being and sanity. The bond with Ava sounds like a bright spot amidst all the turmoil, and it's great to hear that she values and respects you both. What do you make of this? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Thank you for joining us today in the rLounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you soon. And please put your chair back where you found it.